From Evoke Media, I'm Sabrina Mirage Naeem. With me is Cassia Binkowski, and this is Breaking Glass, a series of conversations with women around the world who are shattering glass ceilings and challenging social norms. They are audacious, gutsy, and their stories are echoed across borders and generations in a rallying cry that is changing the narrative for women everywhere. We're heading to London today to speak with Greta Francesca Iori, the beautiful, exotic Greta, who is Ethiopian and Italian, lives in London, between London and Ethiopia. She, for the last decade, has been building a career in the natural resource management field in human and wildlife conflict resolution and wildlife crime management. And we're talking to Greta about what it's like to be at the forefront of the wildlife crime industry, what it's like to be a woman, and bringing other women into the resolution of wildlife crime and why it's important.
Absolutely, Sabrina. I think what's really interesting about this is Greta really does pull back the curtains for us. She talks about the ways in which women are driving the industry as well as dismantling the industry. She talks about the women whose shoulders she's standing on as she builds a reputation and carves out credibility for women in this industry at large. And she's talking about the fear that she has as a woman in such a male-dominated space, a male-dominated and very violent industry that she's dedicated her career to.
Take a listen. Greta, thank you so much for joining us from London. We're so excited to have you with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
So we're going to dive right in. You've spent the past 10 years building a career in natural resource management, human-wildlife conflict resolution, and wildlife crime management. So in other words, illegal poaching. Your work has taken you from Ethiopia to South Africa. You've done a lot of your work is primarily in the Horn of Africa. And today you're spearheading one of the first ever transboundary public-private partnerships to manage a protected area in Ethiopia. So before we get into that work, which is really interesting, and the gender roles of that work, we want to understand a little bit more about your childhood. You have a very diverse background. You're in London now, but you usually are between London and Ethiopia. But you're also Italian. Tell us a little bit about where you were born, about your family, paint a picture for us.
Thank you for having me, Sabrina. And you're very right. My life is very global. And I actually was born in the Netherlands, although I'm Ethiopian and Italian. But in fact, I was just born there because my aunt was living there. My mom wanted to be close to her sister. But I spent a majority of my life in Ethiopia growing up in Addis Ababa, the capital. My father is Italian, but he was also born in modern-day Asmara, Eritrea, so former Ethiopia. And therefore, our lives are very much rooted in that area of the world.
What did it look like for a little girl growing up in Ethiopia? I mean, clearly you had global roots and maybe a little bit of insight into those cultures, but paint a picture of what it looked like to be a little girl. What did you dream of being? What were the women around you doing, your mothers, your aunts? What did that look like?
I believe my childhood was so beautiful, was such a privileged. I come from such a privileged space to know that I was always loved and grew up in a family full of support. My mother, being the Ethiopian mother, was very nurturing, very characteristic of an Ethiopian mother, connecting me to my roots, connecting me to my ancestry. But we came from a middle-class privileged family, so I went to an international school. I really had the best of both worlds, where I lived in this magical country that has vast landscapes, rich ethnicities, rich histories, but also really never forgot the importance of where my mother grew up, which is in poverty, and how she came to be such a privileged mother and be able to give that to me and my brother and my father as well.
Did she talk to you often about how she grew up and how it was different from how you grew up?
Absolutely. My mother, in fact, it's her story that has really, really inspired me to become a strong woman. And I think a lot of us women really are rooted in our journeys, in our mother's journeys, and our ancestors' journeys and difficulties and the challenges that they've overcome or faced. My mother lost her parents when she was only 9 years old. So she was orphaned at 9, and she was with many siblings in rural Ethiopia. So having that as the backdrop of who my mother was always very present in the forefront of who I wanted to become.
And your mother and father met where?
They met in Addis. So my father was also working in the capital when my mother was in her 20s, and she was working as a secretary in a store. I think it was a carpet store. And he was gone into the store to buy a carpet, and he met her and they fell in love.
How much did how connected was your childhood in Addis, which is a huge city? How connected was it to natural spaces, to the outdoors, to wildlife? How much of that was present growing up?
So that's interesting you say that, because it's true that Addis is so big, and I've always felt like it's such a bubble of its own that it almost doesn't feel like the rest of the country. But again, I was very lucky that my parents really prioritized our connection to the broader realities of the country, that they wanted to really make us know that Addis wasn't Ethiopia. And my mother and father were both adamant about this. So when we had holidays, any weekends, long weekends away, we would always be in rural landscapes to get to know a more realistic view, or a more diverse view of what other Ethiopians might be living like, what other realities might be, and that our reality was not the only reality, and that it was a very privileged way of life.
So when you decided you wanted to go into this field of wildlife crime, and it's a very kind of dangerous area. It's highly politicized. There's a lot of politics and bureaucracy involved here. Were your parents supportive of that path?
To be honest, at the beginning, no, because they always thought it was a phase. When I also myself, when I first got into the wildlife crime world, I had kind of stumbled into it without really planning. I was studying the broader conservation nexus. But at the time of my studies, the illegal wildlife trade of the rhino horn was really at the height of its peak, and it was being spoken about by major media, and in the past that had never happened. So I got drawn to that, but I never thought that that would become my career, if you see what I mean.
Can you paint a picture for us a little bit for the people who, are maybe outside of Africa, who don't know the realities of what's really going on the ground? I think that both Cassie and I have been to Africa as tourists and have gone on safari, and it's incredible, but it's a different world than what is happening kind of behind the scenes. Please tell us what is going on.
So before I even delve into like wildlife crime, we need to really understand where that stems from. And that really comes from the broader challenges of wildlife conservation and protected area management and poverty and all the social markers that really define natural spaces. So that means the social political situation, the economic situation, the cultural and traditional situation. And government and conservation models are rooted in neocolonial models, which are what really undermines all of the challenges that we're currently facing. So it's really important for people to understand that wildlife crime is really just a symptom of a bigger problem, of something that started a long time ago and now is kind of manifesting as the illegal wildlife trade, or poaching, or trafficking, or any illicit industry usually has a bigger picture problem, right?
When we hear wildlife crime, so many of us jump straight to the assumption that we're talking about poaching, about ivory, rhinoceros horns, elephant tusks. Can you tell us a little bit about what else is going on in the wildlife crime area?
Absolutely. So when you take the view of seeing the broader picture of environmental crime, then there's many things that you can define as crime, like land grabbing, lack of governance, corruption, toxic norms of societal hierarchies that really marginalize specific community members, such as women and